Hey y'all, welcome back. My name's Katie, this is Dark Side of the Truth, and we're now friends.
Did we just become best friends? Yup!
If you still believe everything that you see online is just coincidence, or that the powers that be are harmless, then buckle up, honey. Because in this video, we're diving deep into the cover of the magazine or article titled The World Ahead 2026. And trust me, it's wild. We're talking secret codes, hidden symbols, global chaos, and a 250-year marker that theorists say ties directly into Satan's little season. Yes, Satan's little season. We all know we've been there before. And everything that's been happening behind the scenes for centuries. It's messy, it's chaotic, and it's exactly what you need to see in order to understand what might be really going on. So do me a favor before we go any further, smash the hell out of the like button. If you're not subscribed to the channel, come on over and get subscribed to the channel, and make sure you hit that little bell icon so hopefully, fingers crossed, YouTube will notify you whenever I upload new videos just like this. Now, quick disclaimer before we go any further, this video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. I am not claiming to predict the future, I'm not clairvoyant, and all interpretations of symbolic artwork are speculative and my opinion alone. None of this should be taken as financial, legal, or medical advice. It's simply a breakdown of imagery and theorists' perspectives. Always do your own research and think critically. Now, with that being said, let's get into it. Roll the intro.
They live, we sleep, the alarms going off, beep beep. Time to wake up to the deceit. Our whole reality's made up by the elite.
Before we start, I need to make a very quick clarification. This image that you're seeing is not from the World Economic Forum. It is the front cover illustration for the Economist magazine's annual The World Ahead 2026 edition, which was released in late 2025. Now, I wanted to make that clarification because I've seen this image going viral online, and everyone is referring to it as like the poster that the World Economic Forum released for 2026, and that's not the case. So I wanted to make that, clarification early on. Every year, The Economist publishes these covers. They're dense, chaotic, symbolic illustrations meant to visually represent what global, political, financial, and technological elites believe that the coming year may look like. Now, whether you interpret that politically, spiritually, or psychologically, these covers are not literal predictions. They're symbolic, highly curated visual commentaries, which is why they consistently spark debate and conspiracy theories pretty much every single year when they're released. The overall theme here is clear. Celebration mixed with control. Progress mixed with restraint. Stability presented through chaos. We're going to break this down slowly and methodically, symbol by symbol, with both official interpretations and theorist interpretations, so you can decide what you think makes sense. Now, when it comes to this image being released each year, there is a color psychology behind it. And the dominating colors that you see in these images do represent something. Red is supposed to represent conflict and urgency. Black represents authority and secrecy. Metallics represent mechanicalism. And then the muted blues are supposed to represent calmness or like cold oversight. Overall, this is not like celebratory color language. The palette reinforces tension, order, and surveillance. This image does not ask a question. It states a condition. Measured, monitored, managed. Now, an important distinction to understand when viewing this image, the cover is not random. It is structured in layers. The center represents time, authority, and like narrative control. The mid layer, or like the middle, represents systems of power, technology, military, economic, all, systems of power. And then on the very outer edges, it is supposed to represent the consequences, or like the conflict, instability, and collapse. Everything in this image spirals outward. Every element interacts with the others. Zooming in reveals hidden cues, secondary symbols, and linkages between the elements. Now that you understand that, Let's start breaking down these symbols. At the very center sits a massive cake with the numbers 250 on it as candles. The flames of these candles are meant to represent something significant. The cake dominates the composition. It draws your eye immediately, at least for me it does. Surrounding it are smaller secondary symbols radiating outward: hands, smoke, and smaller human figures. The cake's frosting is colored in muted tones, not bright or festive, but signaling the solemnity of what it represents rather than celebration. The official interpretation of this cake is that it marks America's 250th anniversary, celebrating 250 years since 1776. It is a symbolic quote-unquote birthday for the United States amid global turbulence. From a mainstream perspective, the cake is a milestone, not really a warning. Theorists see this very differently. The 250 candles represent to them 250 years into Satan's little season. This, according to them, is a marker of elapsed time, not time remaining. The cake is a ceremonial acknowledgement of a phase that has been active for centuries. Its prominence in the composition signals that this event or phase is central to the year's unfolding narrative. The symbolic implications are that the celebratory appearance hides restraint. Central placement implies control and oversight. Everything in this image seems to orbit this moment, like a gravitational point in time. Notice how all of the chains, hands, and secondary figures point or spiral towards the cake, almost like drawing your eye there purposefully. Emerging directly from the cake is a raised fist, typically the symbol for freedom. However, this hand is handcuffed and chained to the cake. Its size is proportionally large compared to the surrounding humans. The chains are detailed and thick, suggesting unbreakable constraint. The fist's fingers are partially flexed, indicating attempted action, struggle, or resistance. The positioning makes it look like the cake itself is restraining it. Now, officially, we're told that the fist symbolizes civil resistance, struggle, and the ongoing fight for liberty. They say it reflects democracy under pressure, but still present. A visual metaphor for freedom within a system. But to theorists, on the other hand, the fist represents the illusion of freedom. It is visible, prominent, yet restrained. The chains are symbolic of hidden constraints imposed by law, governing structures, or unseen powers. The central cake is no longer neutral. It becomes a trap, tying freedom to ceremonial milestones rather than actual liberty. The symbolic implications? Well, it raises the question, are we truly free or only appearing free? Are we really truly free, or are we free to do as we're told? Then, symbolically, it is chained to the quote marker of time, which shows control over both temporal and societal narratives. It functions as a visual tension point as well, a struggle contained in plain sight. I want you guys to pause here and notice how the chains interact with the cake's edges, visually binding liberty to the milestone itself. Now, while we're still focused on this cake, zoom in a little further and you'll notice an American flag subtly placed behind the chained fist. This ties the illusion of freedom narrative directly to the United States and reflects the ongoing struggle for liberty. Now, officially, we're told that this image represents the tension between freedom and law in American democracy in today's day and age. They want you to believe that it represents responsibility and order, not oppression. Theorists, however, see it as a symbol that Americans think they are free, but in reality are among the most controlled populations living during Satan's little season. They say that's the reason for the flag to be there, so there is no mistaking it that they are talking about Americans. Again, not factual, this is just what theorists believe. Surrounding the fist, and really scattered throughout the entire map, you'll find syringes. Officially, these are supposed to represent medical and health symbols, but theorists interpret them as a means to control bodies, sustain compliance, and regulate populations at a biological level. Now, at the top left of this image, you will notice a massive cargo ship. However, it's not your regular typical cargo ship. There are cannons hidden along the sides, integrated into the hull of the ship. Waves around the ship are turbulent, and smoke trails suggest movement and activity. The official interpretation of this image is that it represents global trade, intersecting with military protection. Militarized supply chains, naval power, and the complex logistics of international commerce are emphasized. Theorists, however, see this as more of a Trojan horse symbolism, a threat disguised as commerce. Aid, trade, and global shipments could hide danger. Ships appear routine, but they carry embedded risk. Now, the symbolic implications of this picture? It appears to show us that trade is not neutral. Everything moves with embedded intent. It's placed near the cake, so it suggests economic systems that orbit the Satan's Little Season milestone. Cannons hidden in plain sight reinforce the motive of hidden control. And what's even creepier about this image is at first it appears to be a regular cargo ship. It isn't until you zoom in that you notice the hidden detail. Theorists highlight this as a literal hidden in plain sight agenda, suggesting hidden intent behind a seemingly normal trade. You'll also notice all throughout this map there are missiles, rockets, and various projectiles. The missiles are cleanly illustrated, mechanical, almost schematic. Explosions or impacts are subtle, not chaotic. They're really not even really shown, it's just kind of like interpreted. Officially, we're told that this represents defense, deterrence, space programs, and global military readiness. Ongoing global conflicts or the pressure to innovate in defense are implied, at least officially speaking. Theorists, on the other hand, interpret this as a permanent escalation. War is not a crisis. It is normalized. The missiles indicate readiness and control rather than spontaneous conflict. Their directionality suggests that strategic projection extends outward from the center, or like the cake in Satan's Little Season. The symbolic implications of this image is that escalation is planned and structured. It suggests that war is systematic, not reactive. It ties into surveillance systems in the mid-layer for like managed conflict. Note the symmetry. It's almost choreographed, not chaotic. Then down here, you'll notice literal swords on top of or over the stock market. Officially, this is supposed to show tension in or over the markets. Theorists, on the other hand, interpret it as economic collapse, triggering real-world conflict. Wars fought over financial systems as much as land or ideology. Small humans in suits move calmly through the scene. Now, I don't really know who every single one of them is supposed to represent, but I would assume this one by the cake is obviously Donald Trump, and this one over here maybe Kim Jong-un or maybe Putin. I don't really know. I would go with Kim Jong-un before Putin, but that'd be my guess. Chaos swirls around them, yet they remain untouched. Their paths are linear. They appear detached. Officially, we're told that this represents governance, diplomacy, and leadership under pressure. Leaders are maintaining order amid global turmoil. Theorists, on the other hand, will tell you that this is elite detachment. The world burns around them, but their paths remain clear. Power is isolated and insulated. They walk through chaos rather than engaging with it. Symbolically, it would highlight the contrast between powerless masses and elite stability. It would emphasize orchestration, like chaos is managed, not random. And it reinforces the quote-unquote control layer of the image. Now, this is important. I want you to notice the scale, because the humans are much smaller than the ships, missiles, and the chains, showing relative influence, at least according to theorists. You'll also notice tiny drones and satellites hovering mid-image. Lines connect them to smaller human figures and cityscapes below. Light blue and metallic gray tones dominate, creating a cold, technological feel. Some satellites are aligned along the outer spiral, reinforcing the pattern from the cake. Officially, we're told that this represents AI integration, global surveillance, and satellite networks. Digital oversight of communications, commerce, and defense is emphasized. However, theorists, on the other hand, say that it symbolizes total visibility. Nothing occurs unseen. Humans are always observed, recorded, and monitored. Systems are automated. Control is invisible, but omnipresent. Now, the symbolic implications of this part, it reinforces the Satan's little season framing. Like monitoring and control are central. The placement between the cake and the outer chaos shows surveillance as a mid-layer enforcement. It suggests that human action is secondary to the systems. If you zoom in on the satellite, you may notice a big aspect that theorists continuously point out, that the signal lines seem to connect subtly to nearly every element in this image. Near the cake, there is also a game controller that's wired and directly connected to a human brain. Now, officially, I guess they could say that this represents like AI or like neurotech integration, but I'm sorry, was there not like any better or more artistic way to show that? Because like this is art after all, but I don't like that visual at all. Like I just don't. And I can totally, absolutely see why theorists would interpret this visual in particular as literal mind control, manipulating humans as easily as playing a fucking video game. Let that sink in. Small robots appear globally, just like scattered randomly. Officially, we're told that they represent automation. However, theorists see it more as like societal control or removing human autonomy. Robots are also seen carrying or maybe delivering packages. Officially, again, we're told that this represents innovation and logistics. But theorists see it as population dependency and AI integration being normalized. Now, while we're on the topic of these currency symbols, around the map you will also find some currency symbols that are red, almost like they've been soaked in blood. Officially, they would probably tell us something dumb, like the red soaked blood money just means that markets are unstable, signifying losses, risk, and financial instability. Theorists, on the other hand, interpret this as literal blood money, profits built on suffering, exploitation, or even blackmail. Pills or loose medication are periodically scattered throughout this image as well. Now, officials will say that this obviously represents healthcare, but theorists see it as population control, or in the very least, a visual representation of a population that's dependent on the pharmaceutical industry. Now also, towards the bottom left of this image, you will find a pole vaulter, mid-run, carrying the pole that is used to launch him in the air, a skier, and a pair competing in what appears to be a boxing match. Officially, we're told that these reflect culture and like entertainment. Theorists, on the other hand, see them as a typical distraction for the masses, keeping attention away from the core systematic control and the one thing that really matters. Some speculate that these images could even symbolically hint at upcoming major global events, like the Olympics somehow being even darker and more twisted in 2026. Essentially, they think that this image could hint at us having a repeat of the BS that happened at the 2025 Olympic show, only worse and far more extreme. Throughout this image, you will also see contained fire, subtle smoke trails, and smoldering effects that appear across multiple zones. The official interpretation is that this represents crisis, unrest, and instability. Theorists, on the other hand, say that this represents controlled collapse, or chaos allowed in a managed way. Smoke patterns often spiral back to the center, reinforcing central orchestration. Now, at this point, some of you may have also noticed this strange, almost out-of-place wine glass spilling towards the bottom left of this map. But for this part, we need to slow down and really look at this and digest what's going on here. There's no bottle, no one pouring anything, and that matters. The wine isn't spilling because it's overflowing due to like a heavy pour or because someone knocked it over. It's spilling because that tank drove by. So what does that mean? Well, for this metaphor, I want you to think of the wine glass as comfort, peace, routine, or people just living. And then I want you to think of the tank as war, government power, or geopolitical decisions made far away, having real-world implications and consequences. So this visual isn't about drinking or partying, and it isn't about luxury. It's about normal life. People were just sitting there, relaxing, and living their lives. And then war passed by so close that it physically shook their world enough to spill the glass. They didn't choose it. They weren't involved, and they didn't start a damn thing. But it still affected them. And the ugly truth of it is, that's how war actually works. Officials would probably explain this image away as collateral disruption, unavoidable consequences, necessary operations, or even say some dumb shit like minimal civilian impact. That makes it better. Theorists, on the other hand, would say that the glass spilling shows how harm is normalized, minimized, and brushed off as no big deal, even though it disrupts real lives. They also argue that this visual serves as a warning that the benefit of distance and comfort are illusions, especially during wartime. Also around this map, you will notice tiny human figures juxtaposed with enormous machines, ships, missiles, and even chains. Officially, we're told that this highlights human endeavor, challenges, and collective effort. Theorists, on the other hand, will tell you that this represents the power imbalance, how individuals are background texture, almost decorative in the delete's eyes, emphasizing systematic dominance. Throughout this image, you will also find a few ice cubes that are physically melting. Officially, the reasoning will be climate change, or something along those lines. Rising global temperatures, environmental instability, and the long-term consequences of industrialization operating on fossil fuels. Theorists, however, will tell you that the ice isn't just ice. It instead hints at Antarctica. And in theory, Antarctica isn't the edge of the world, but the boundary. According to them, melting ice means that boundaries are changing. Some believe it signals a coming shift, not just climate, but location, physically moving humanity itself into a new section of a much larger world map, which, side note, we discussed in my moon map video, for those of you who saw that. They're talking a reset, a rotation. Not the end of the planet or the end of life as we know it, but the map changing and our known world rotating or shifting. Now don't freak out, because even if that is true, nothing would just collapse. Nothing would explode. The ice would just melt, slowly and quietly. Then, out on the far right edge, there is what appears to be a small remote control for a television set. Officially, I'd imagine that they would say this indicates technology or oversight. However, theorists interpret it as a metaphor. All the chaos, war, markets crashing or soaring, and control as a whole can be turned on or off and literally controlled at will by those in power. Very detached and extremely impersonal, which I wouldn't expect anything else when it comes to them. I'm just being real. So now that we've gone over every single part of this image, every symbol and every detail, the overall message for 2026 kind of depends on the lens that you're looking at this through. Because on one hand, you could walk away from this feeling reassured, watched over, or even protected in a sense. Technology is advancing, systems are improving, and governments are guiding things forward. Or, and that's a big or, you can walk away from this feeling uneasy, controlled, and overstimulated. Nothing happening anymore is accidental or coincidental. And the future feels less human and more managed. And what really makes me pause is this. If this was really just meant to be a harmless artistic reflection or prediction of some sorts of the year ahead, we are all told, You would think that a few different visual choices or representations could have avoided so much uncertainty, so much discomfort, and so much internet theorizing altogether. Which makes you wonder, was this actually a misinterpretation by practically everyone who's ever seen this image? Or was discomfort the point? Because this is art. And last time I checked, art is designed, like physically designed, to make you feel something without the artist having to like literally put it in words. And art definitely doesn't always explain itself. So, in my opinion, it is possible. But when this many people walk away from this image feeling the same twisted, gut-wrenching way, it makes me question what the artist's intentions were when creating this. Or, in the very least, what 2026 has in store for each and every one of us. Like, no. No, thank you. Anyways, you guys already know the deal. We have officially made it to the end of this video. Thank you so much for your time. Seriously, it means the fucking world to me. You have no idea. Do me a favor, drop a comment saying Katie exposes it in the comments, just so I know that you made it all the way to the end of this video. And if you didn't already like the video in the beginning of the video, do me a favor and smash the hell out of the like button now. If you're not subscribed to the channel, come on over and get subscribed to the channel, and make sure you hit that little bell icon, so hopefully, fingers crossed, YouTube will notify you whenever I upload new videos just like this. But with that being said, I think I'm gonna go ahead and hop on out of here because I don't have anything else to ramble about. I love you all so much. Take care of each other. And until next time, I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.